I've seen too many hobbyists grab a cheap hand-crank bead roller off some online marketplace, only to discover that the tool wobbles, the rollers wear out after a weekend of use, and the whole thing ends up gathering dust in the garage. That kind of buyer's regret is the exact opposite of what you want when you're spending hard-earned money on a metalworking setup that you'll rely on for weeks, months, or even years. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So the question I keep hearing is, does the Eastwood Motorized Bead Roller feel like a smarter buy, or is it just another pricey gimmick that looks good on paper? Let's start with the problem most people are trying to solve. If you're shaping sheet metal, especially when you need a smooth, rounded edge for a project like a custom exhaust, a bike frame, or a decorative panel, a bead roller is one of those tools that can save you hours of grinding and filing. The manual models I've tried in the past required a lot of muscle, and the consistency of the radius depended entirely on how steady my hand was. The Eastwood version throws a 36-inch motor and a foot pedal control into the mix, which means the rollers spin at a steady speed while you simply guide the metal with both hands. In practice, that translates to a cleaner roll with far less fatigue, especially if you're working on longer runs of material. Who should consider this machine? If you're a serious hobbyist who already has a small shop, a set of TIG or MIG welders, and you regularly fabricate parts that need a professional finish, the motorized bead roller is a natural extension of your toolset. It also makes sense for a small fabrication business that needs to churn out consistent edges on a daily basis. The foot pedal lets one person keep both hands on the workpiece, which speeds up production. On the flip side, if you only need a bead roller once a year for a simple project, or if you're still learning the basics of metal shaping and haven't invested in a proper workbench, you might be better off with a manual roller or even a simple sanding jig. The upfront cost of the Eastwood unit is not negligible, and you'll need a stable stand and enough floor space to accommodate the 36-inch wheel span. Now, let's talk about the practical strengths that actually matter once you have the machine in your shop. First, the motor's torque is generous enough to roll 14-gauge steel without stalling, something I've seen cheaper units struggle with even on 16-gauge. The foot pedal control is another real win. You can start, stop, and adjust speed without reaching for a switch, which keeps your workflow smooth. Because the rollers are driven from a single motor, the edge radius stays uniform across the entire length of the piece, so you won't end up with a perfect curve on one end and a sloppy wobble on the other. The stand that comes with the unit is sturdy, with a wide base that keeps the whole setup from tipping when you press down on a thick sheet. I've also appreciated the way Eastwood designed the roller housings to be easily removable for cleaning. Metal shavings can accumulate, and being able to pop the rollers out without special tools saves a lot of frustration. No product is perfect, and the bead roller has a few trade-offs worth noting. Because the motor is mounted on a separate housing, the unit is heavier than a basic manual roller, which means you'll need to allocate a dedicated corner of your shop for it. You can't just roll it out of a closet and set it up on a temporary bench. The foot pedal, while convenient, does have a slight learning curve. If you're used to a simple on-off switch, the variable pressure required to modulate speed can feel a bit finicky at first. Another point is that the rollers are fixed at a single radius, so you can adjust the bead size without swapping out the rollers for a different set, something the manual models sometimes allow with interchangeable dies. If you need multiple bead sizes for a single job, you'll have to purchase additional roller sets from Eastwood or a third-party supplier. Real-world use cases bring these strengths and weaknesses into sharper focus. I used the roller on a project where I needed to fabricate a custom roll cage for a vintage car. The steel tubing was 12 millimeters in diameter, and I wanted a smooth, rounded edge to avoid stress concentrations. With the motor running at a low, steady speed, I was able to feed the tubing through the rollers in a single pass, and the result was a perfectly uniform curve that required no post-rolling filing. In another instance, a friend of mine who builds custom motorcycle frames tried this same unit on 10 millimeters aluminum. The motor held up, but because the aluminum was softer, the rollers left a faint imprint pattern that needed a light sanding pass, something you wouldn't see with a manual roller that tends to be slower and gives.